but then I started thinking, maybe it's not the only reading that I could do of the situation of Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys Targaryen downfall was very rushed, and I feel like my disconformity regarding her ending comes from that, because maybe if we could show her downfall more explicitly in different series, in more series, I could say, okay, you lose your head, or you lose your sense of being and ruling in a certain point, and I'm not going to follow you down the whole path this time. But I also find, or I was chatting about this with friends, and a friend of mine highlighted the fact that he enjoyed this Daenerys downfall because it showed the corruption of power. When we started this journey with Daenerys Targaryen, we wasn't expecting her to be the villain. I believe Daenerys Targaryen was set to have the journey of the hero, but not the villain. However, according to my friend, the more power Daenerys got, the more she wanted, and the less opposition she bear or she was able to handle. In a third kind of aspect of Daenerys Targaryen, in a third theory that I take after watching the whole TV series, is that at the beginning of the story, Daenerys has the sympathy, not only the viewers, but the people around her. She's freeing people that were before considered slaves, and that means that she gave them a meaning of free men, women, and children. But when she, this resulted as a very, 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 very dedicated ruler to her people. So a very a very empathic person, a person who understood the feelings and needs of her people, and the more people she was congregated, the more people she could control and listen to, which is great. The problem with the series now is that because she is landed into a world that she doesn't know, Westeros, a country that she doesn't control, she doesn't know the history other than the tales that she's been told as a child, and the position that she holds in these stories. The idea of arriving to a place where you are a foreigner, even though you are part of this society as well, and even a rightful heir or heiress, I have the feeling that the moment she reaches Westeros shores, she starts losing that empathy because she's really close to the throne, and she's rushing towards that goal instead of taking her time and listen to the people and see through that process if she can somehow convince more people to join or to gather forces in her name instead of the North or the Cersei's. The problem with the North is that they are very focused on we only trust, and even more now after being abused so many times in this series. We only trust people we know. We only trust people that belong to the North. So, for example, the Stark family. The thing is that when Daenerys Targaryen arrives to the North, I believe that she could form an alliance with Sansa and Arya, even though the North wanted to be independent, in the sense that we are women, we understand, tell me what your people need, and if we get to an agreement regarding your independence, I need your help. However, she doesn't approach Sansa or Arya like that. She's like, she's asking, she's basically forcing them to follow what other people did, which is surrounded to her and her dragons and her people. So instead of having a lot of listening process, where she understood why the North needed more kind of independence, or what the North needed in a very concise kind of way of putting it. She stopped being an empath. She stopped listening to these people and their feelings towards this idea, and started asking for submission, which is what the North has done all along, and they are actually fed up with that. This is the difference, I believe, between Sansa and Daenerys. Sansa left the North when she was a child and came back after a hell of torture, first in King's Landing, then outside King's Landing, and then again in her own house when Winterfell was actually conquered by northerner people who were initially loyal to the House Stark and then betrayed them. Sansa Stark arrived home and regained the confidence of the people around her in the North. So she's been through hell. She has seen what politics and intrigues do in court, and how to do them, how to manage all that political intrigue, political discourse within the court. And she also has seen how the North and Winterfell, as example, has been abused several times. So she knows the needs, not only her own needs as a ruler, but the needs of the people that she's going to or aspires to govern in the end. For me, Sansa learning process from a very young age is what Daenerys Targaryen forgets. She has to learn how to, Sansa has to learn how to stop being an innocent child and use the political communication and political maneuvering that she's learned in King's Landing, to using the tools that she has to provide the Northerners, the villagers and all, with the needs, with the elements necessary to cover all their needs. So Sansa has a lot of empathy, while Daenerys, the sooner she gets to these Westeros coast, or the closest she is to the throne, starts forgetting how to deal with feelings, loyalties and empathy at the end of the day. So for me, Sansa and Daenerys do a very similar path, or follow a very similar path in a reverse sense. This leads me to the importance of power and representation. We've been talking before of power and femininity, or female power, with Sansa and Daenerys, for example. But now I want to tackle an issue that I already said, that I wanted Daenerys on the throne, and I was surprised and quite shocked by the idea that Brandon Stark ended up being king. He ended up being king after a council of noble members of different noble houses who decided to pick him up as the king. Now I'm going to try to explain to you why I was shocked, and why even though I prefer Daenerys, I support Brandon's choice. Brandon Stark at the beginning of the first series was thrown out of the window by... So, resulting of that fall, he ended up in a wheelchair. So, as it was very, very, very remarked in the series, throughout the series, man in that condition, with a disability, in a medieval time, cannot be a soldier, what Brandon wanted as a kid when this happened. But Brandon decided to break all the rules for himself when he started having these nightmares, weird nightmares, that indicate him that he had to go up to the north, go farther the wall, and find the kind of mystery person called the Three-Eyed Raven, the person who sees the future, the present, and the past. When he finds him, by touch, the powers of the Three-Eyed Raven go to him, and therefore he becomes the more powerful person on the whole Westeros society, even though it's quite mystical and not a lot of people know it, because the Three-Eyed Raven idea was actually part of the folklore. It wasn't supposed to be real, in the same way the White Walkers weren't supposed to be real. And I found myself very, very engaged with Bran's story, because he, having very, very little physical strength or physical movement, in a way that is very hard to understand that a nobleman in that condition could survive, became the most powerful person on earth, because he basically could see everything and push everyone to a certain result or a certain event that he knew it was coming. So having that character with so many power, or so much power, with his own characteristics, I find it really, really hard at the beginning. But then I said, it's actually the first time in a medieval setting where the disabled character that goes in a wheelchair like me is not killed off, or is not taken as a psychic or as a disposable character, or just the kind of sad note to this story. Brandon Stark was not any of that, and actually he was very powerful, and this idea of knowledge, having all this knowledge at his disposition, is what pays off in the end, because of this knowledge is why he is appointed as king. He has the whole history of Westeros in his head, and that knowledge has to be managed wisely. So Brandon Stark gets appointed as king, having actually proved that physical force is not what matters the most within the medieval times, or at least not in this medieval setting, because what is highlighted here is the power of knowledge. In the same vein, when Tyrion Lannister is actually appointed Hand of the King for Brandon Stark reign, is also very similar to Brandon Stark appointed as king, because Tyrion Lannister is actually a dwarf, and he's depicted as that, and the actor who plays him has also the same kind of physical appearance. So for me, having two characters with these abilities in the most powerful positions in the story is very important, because we were not discarded as normally would happen, but they are highlighted as the most intelligent and actual capable of ruling, when normally you would choose the most powerful, or the strongest person instead of the most intelligent one. And I find that very, very refreshing, because even though it's contradicting with what I said before about Daenerys, I find that it was actually time to have this kind of representation not pointed out just as a side note, as a sad note or a side note about how disabled people exist. Disabled people exist and are as able, as in this case ruling, but of doing any other activity, and the idea of having them in the most powerful positions in the Game of Thrones kind of a power struggle, I find it really, really encouraging. So even though I wanted Daenerys Targaryen to be in the throne, and I still have a lot of issues with her ending. I find myself very happy about the resolution because the creators have broken all the expectations regarding that matter. So this is it. This is my dissertation about Game of Thrones as a show, and I hope you enjoy it, and I encourage you to give me your opinions on the comment section below if you want. See you next week. Bye!